Okay, we should be live now. Brilliant. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Opera in Conversation, the talk series run by Oxford Contemporary Opera. My name is Zelina Vuliami, and I'm the founder president of Oxford Contemporary Opera. And I'm really, really excited today to be joined by Nadine Benjamin. Thank you so much for joining us, Nadine.
Oh, thank you for having me. That's really lovely to be with you all.
Oh, well, so let's just start. I mean, how are you? How are you dealing with everything? How are you finding this third lockdown that we're now in?
Um, I'm actually finding it quite invigorating. It's been a time for me to really look at making my own work and making theatre.
Mm.
So I'm working with a collective and collaborative, conscious way with a team of people to tell my life story, and it's called Beam. So it's a really exciting time using all forms of music, including opera, to tell the story. And it's very exciting.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah, can you tell us a tiny bit more about what you're doing, or is it sort of all under wraps for now?
No, we've been doing it with Britain Peers Arts. I have Darren Abrahams, who is the director, Claire Shovelton and Faye Jennett as producers, and the main producer is Britain Peers Arts. And on the 26th and the 27th of June, we will have a live performance of the work. So we've been working in kind of smaller R&Ds, research and development, to really look at trauma and how through music it can heal a life, and what does that look like, that whole journey from fragmentation to wholeness. And we're all working collectively, consciously together. We have a kind of a conscious co-construction of how we work and how the kind of the company is formed, and then we have a conscious co-creation of how we work artistically. Yeah, it deals with rape, it deals with domestic violence, it deals with class, it deals with disability, and it deals with physicality. We've got Gerard Martin Dance doing the dance choreography around it. And Jan Rautio is the music director. So we've got this. We're using Uchenna Ngwe and the Decus Ensemble to have a small chamber. So yeah, so it's an exciting thing to be doing, and it's asking me to be very brave and courageous.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like such an interesting project, and it's so great to hear that projects and live performances are actually happening at the moment. I mean, will this be the first live performance that you will have done this year in 2021?
There's going to be one more just before that. On the 12th of June, I'll be doing a concert at St James's in Piccadilly with my duo partner, Emergence duo partner, Niccolo Panizza. We specialise in American music, and we look at the different stories and the relationships between those stories, with the text and the composer and ourselves, and how we can kind of deliver those. That concert is on the 12th of, is it the 11th or the 12th of June? It's one of the two, but I'll let you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, all of that sounds really wonderful. It's so interesting, isn't it, thinking back, because I think we've been in lockdown for just over a year now. It's so interesting thinking back to how live performance used to be, and we had loads of people in the audience and everything. How do you think your performance style has changed, given the fact that we don't have that many people in audiences, or we have no audiences at all?
I'm really selective, more selective now about what I curate and who I curate with. It's become ever so important to understand the value of being an artist, and the kind of language and the communication that we wish to give to the world, and the differences, or the messages that we wish to send down the line as well. And also to never forget the element of entertainment as well, that sheer joy of having the pleasure of performing, but also having the pleasure of an audience listening. So it's really being mindful of all those elements, and in our research as well, in terms of what is curated, really, really important.
Yeah, and I know that back in 2020, I think you were performing at the Royal Opera House in their sort of program of operas that were written specially or selected specially because they had quite small forces and everything. Can you tell me a bit more about that and what the experience was like, you know, performing after a sort of global pandemic lockdown and everything?
Well, it was a weird one for me, just simply because one of my end goals was to perform as a soloist at the Royal Opera House. So to be able to do that, to achieve my goal within a pandemic, was near enough a miracle, to be honest. So I just felt this miracle shine down on me in that respect. I also understood that most of these projects, they're set up in very short spaces of time because we have to be more COVID aware, and, you know, things are starting up, postponing, shutting down. You realise that most people are doing things within 2-week windows because we're recognising that that's what we've got. So you're being told about the music that you've got to create, and then you've got 2 weeks to learn it, and then you turn up, and then you've got to do it. And, you know, so there's an element of excitement and pressure, but there's also an element of the sheer gratitude of being able to perform. And to the piece that we did was New Age, Dark Age. Oh my gosh, what the name's going?
Yeah, New Dark Age, and it was directed by Katie Mitchell.
Yeah, New Dark Age. You know, we were kind of voicing or being the voice of the pandemic within our stories and within the music of each of those composers that were chosen. So it was the first kind of live voicing, because we did have a live audience. And so it was amazing to be seen, but it was really emotional. I remember the journey being really, really emotional, and just working with such quality colleagues as well, and quality artists. You know, just, and Grant G and his film in that was just stunning, you know. So it was just a completely different way of thinking about what could an opera be, and what did we wish to communicate within that.
Yeah, and how did you find the sort of rehearsing, obviously in a COVID secure way, obviously when you're meant to be distanced and everything? Did that really change your process of learning the music, would you think?
I think it changes your whole frequency process. I'm very much into energy, and what energy we bring into a room, what energy we leave in a room, you know, and what energy we carry around with ourselves. And there's this, in this social distancing, there is this responsibility of boundary. And how does that kind of change how I communicate? Where does the tension lie in that? And how does that mean that I'm going to communicate not just to an audience member or to the music, but to the colleague next to me? And because there's this thing of really wanting to touch your colleagues as well, especially when you're singing in that close proximity, but recognising that you can't. But what I found was the most thing that I was in most gratitude for was the companies. All the companies that I have worked with, Scottish Opera, Royal Opera House, English National Opera, during this lockdown, their element of wishing to keep us safe. So because they're wiping things down and, you know, making us wear masks and, you know, and really sticking to the social distancing rules, and there is then another form of freedom that you would not necessarily have been in contact with before, that you live the work from that new place rather than the place that you would have before.
Yeah, that definitely seems the case. And as I've said on this series before, you know, we're so glad that performances are happening, obviously in a safe way that is prioritizing people. But I mean, thinking back now on, you know, as I said, we've had about a year of lockdown now, which seems crazy. How well do you think the opera industry, particularly in the UK, has responded to the pandemic?
You know, I think the opera industry in itself actually has responded really well. I mean, for me personally, but who has responded even better are the artists. Because there is this value now that they didn't know that they had. There is this new way of speaking, and there are these new voices, and there are these new permissions that are now endowed upon ourselves to recognize that we are also the gatekeepers. And so it makes it so exciting for the first time to take this self-agency and this self-ownership of one's own art form, and to bring what you wish to see into the platform, whether it be on an online basis, whether it be in a recording, whether it be bringing ideas to companies on smaller scales. There's this real, what my friend Darren Abrahams and I are calling conscious creative leadership. Where you're really saying, I'm in charge. I'm not in control. I'm not in control of what happens. We're in a pandemic. Somebody's going to tell me I can't go somewhere soon. But I am in charge of my day-to-day. And that means I get to make the choice of how I show up as an artist, whether it be online or offline.
Yeah. So how then do you think, how has your day-to-day changed in that way, in your artistic kind of process and, learning pieces and sort of everything else? Obviously I would like to talk about your mentorship program, but maybe in a bit, but just, going back to this sort of day-to-day process, how can we kind of insert creativity in there?
So what I've now is chosen to work, at the beginning of the pandemic, I kind of stopped singing and I recognised that I needed to serve, and I started these shows called Safe at Home Sessions. I've done over 100 episodes now, and it was really important just to show up in the other part of myself, the person that, as you say, has mentored and is a certified high performance coach and, is an NLP mind coach. And just to recognise that there were other parts of me that could be of service. And one of the first things that I would say to people is, make sure you create a schedule. Make sure you create a weekly schedule. It's the only thing that's going to mentally keep you well. And I know at the beginning, everybody thought I must have been off my head. They really did. They really must have thought. But even for me, this creating of this schedule, I was saying to people, look, you put in your fun time, you put in your rest time, you put in your play time, and you put in your work time, you put in your family time, you put in your meditation or your prayer time, but you fill up that schedule. And it doesn't have to be just about doing, but it's also about being. And so I've been doing this the whole time, which has helped me be really productive. But what I then realised in this second half of this third lockdown was that actually what I was actually creating was a lifestyle again that I'm in charge of. So now I coach on Sundays. So all day on Sundays I have groups and individuals that I coach, and I take them what I call from self-sabotage to self-mastery, and it's a 3-month curriculum where it's all about self-agency, self-mastery, and then on Mondays is my admin day. So it's my admin day to do all the things that I would normally go, oh my gosh, when is there a window for that? When is there a window for that? I get all of that done. And I've still got a couple of groups on that evening as well that I see. But Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays are my music days. And you cannot come near them with a barge pole. They are my projects. They are my composing. There's my creativity. They're my singing. I have a coaching lesson on a Tuesday. I have a singing lesson on a Wednesday, and I have another coaching on a Thursday. And then on Friday, I have my day, just for me. It's all about me. And I don't put anything in that, because I can choose what I like to do. If I choose to put a duvet over my head all day, then that's what I do, because that's that freedom. And then on a Saturday, I'm with my partner. And and then they get to choose, what they wish to do. And that's great. But I was choosing a lifestyle. And now that I've chosen a lifestyle, I get so much more done.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to hear it. Yeah, I think that is the key, isn't it, of creating kind of structure and routine. As boring as it might sound, it really does help in this sort of climate of not really knowing what to do and everything else. You said just now about focusing on things like self-agency and mastery. Do you have any advice then for musicians who in this lockdown, have kind of maybe had a bit of a turn of lack of self-confidence, of maybe thinking about giving up? Do you have any advice for those sorts of people in that kind of area of self-agency and things?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is about taking care of your mind. I think that's one of the most important things that we could be doing in our lockdown is our mental health. And it really isn't always about being productive. It's not always about doing. As I said before, it is also about being. So what are the things that you used to love doing that you've not done in a while? What were your hobbies? You know, I love binker and thread and putting a needle through binker and, you know, putting the different colour threads and making an owl. You know, it's, you know, for me, that's just what floats my boat. You know, but I remember one of the first people that started to come and watch some of the Safe at Home sessions. She hadn't taken out her sewing machine in a while, and you know, she started taking that out, and now she's got a mask business. You know, so it's that thing of just reminding yourself to kind of really take care of your mind and take care of the mind, not just mentally, but through your physicality as well. So spend time, if you can't exercise, stretch. You know, and also take time to be in connection, whether that's in connection with friends or colleagues or family, you know, just to let someone know someone can see you as a mirror, you know, somebody can, yeah, you can connect, you know. And I think to vision, you know, I mean, lots of people that I work with, I really get them to understand that if it's not about dreaming, you know, it's not this thing about this fantasy. It's about what could your reality actually look like if you spent some time giving it the energy it needs. What could your world look like? So what would you smell? What would you taste? What would you touch? What would you sense? Who would you be with? You know, what doors would you be walking through? How would you speak? What would your deportment look like? What would your body look like? How much energy would you have? You know, what courage would it take? And what are the smaller steps that you need to take in between this moment now and that vision? And living from the vision, not to the vision. If you're visioning every day, you're already in it. So you're just living from it. But if you're trying to get it, and this word try, I can't stand this trying this, the brain and the body separate. They have no way of coming together with integration. But as soon as you say, I'm in the process of, I'm willing to, I'm working through, or I am doing, your whole energy, your whole vibrancy changes. And you recognize that then you're in connection with you. And that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I'm being mentored right now. This is brilliant. Exactly what I needed. You know, the sun is shining. It's great. I mean, that leads me really nicely on to talking about Everybody Can, which is, of course, your mentorship scheme. And can you just tell us a bit about that and what led you to sort of found it and set it up and everything?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for me was recognizing that I was coming into an industry that I didn't know anything about, actually. But what I did know is that I'd come from a business background, I'd come from a corporate background, and we worked in structure. There were chains of command, there were, you know, practices, there were leadership that you honoured, there was styles of practice, you know, there were rules of engagement, you know, you knew where you stood. And when I came in to be an artist, I was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing there, there's nothing to hold on to, what happened? And I have to say, I felt like I was drowning. I mean, I really did. It was a scary place to be. I mean, you know, and especially, you know, I didn't go to a college or anything, so that was even worse for me. But what I recognised was all the people that I had admired had mentors, and I thought, I don't know enough about opera yet, but what could I offer that I could engage with people, and I could then have this practice of sharing skills, and you know, and that's how it was birthed, really. And then I would just ask. I mean, Dame Josephine Barstow mentored me for a while. Martina Arroyo has mentored me. Britain Piers Arts are mentoring me now because I really believe in this. Maria Callas had loads of mentors. You know, Joan Sutherland had mentors. You know, you look at these people. Pavarotti had mentors. When you look at these people who had all these mentors, and not just of, you know, they were conductors, they were coaches, they were business people. They took them underneath their wing and walked alongside them. And so I'm really into connection, championship, and celebrating people. I just think it's one of the most important things that you could do to raise someone's self-esteem. And, and we can raise our own self-esteem by doing esteemable acts. And one of those first esteemable acts is really engaging with our own self-worth, because we deserve that, So through the high performance lens now, I now take people through that curriculum, and we spend 3 months together, and we work through courage and energy and influence and persuasion and psychology and purpose, and we really ask some really challenging questions, and some are in group format and some I do one-to-one. I used to do it all for free. I now have to charge because we're in a different time and a different format, but I keep the fees as low as I can. And but it's been a very special thing to be able to do.
And I'm so glad that you have set it up, because I'm sure, and I know that it has helped so many people. I think it's this common thing, isn't it, that to work in the arts, people often assume that you just need talent, and that's kind of it. You might need to know a few people, but it's mainly about the talent. Whereas actually, what I'm increasingly discovering from these talks is that it is so much more about things like, as you said, self-worth, but also the ability to negotiate sort of, business and social media image. I mean, is that the kind of thing that you're working on with your mentees?
Yes. Well, the thing is they're going to bring their own curriculum. We work within a curriculum, but they're going to bring their own curriculum. So we go to wherever they need to go to within that. I mean, some of the feedback that I've had has just been phenomenal. They came to me for one thing and left with something that they never knew that they needed to work on. So and sometimes that's the thing that we need to kind of steer us in a new direction, and to bring new energy and new vibrancy into our lives, and to also stop holding ourselves back and stop limiting ourselves, because we're limitless. But unless somebody's with you and walking alongside a journey with you, and they really love doing that with you, not because one of the things that I recognise in the opera industry that very early on was that there could be some people who taught that would kind of emit the qualities of a parent. And I knew that I had to be careful around that, because it would take away, as I've been saying, my self-agency. And then I would have to keep looking for that validation in order to know that I was doing something right. And actually, that has to start with me. They are a mirror for me, to remind me, because at the end of the day, when I'm on stage, I'm on that stage alone, and I've got to be able to do it for myself, So yeah, it is really about just claiming one's, again, self-agency and consciousness, and really being able to to take ownership and leadership of oneself.
And I think as you sort of demonstrated, there really isn't the sort of one size fits all, and that there isn't a sort of one step into opera either. I mean, I know you must have been asked this, 1,000 times, but just for our listeners who don't really know, could you give us a brief sort of story of how it is that you got into opera? Because it is a really interesting story, and it's sort of not something that you hear every day.
Oh my goodness, that's a long story. But the truncated version is kind of, I used to sing garage pop, drum and bass, and I used to be in a recording studio all the time. And while I was in the recording studio recording, people would say to me, Nadine, can you sing a little, like you sound like an opera, you sound like you're singing opera, can you just sound a little less, just opera-y, they would say. And I would say, but I'm not, I'm just singing in my natural voice. And then I got into the corporate world, and I was, in the corporate world, and then on a trading floor, and and I was about to, be given a huge promotion, but my boss was just like, can I just check in with you or something? You're really bright and intelligent, and but once you go over this threshold, you ain't coming back from this, you know. And he was really adamant about that. And he was like, you know, at the time he said, I'm in my 40s and, you know, I've got kids and a family and I can't do without this money now, you know. But I really see that you don't have to actually know what this is like. You could, is there anything that you've wanted to do? And I said, my teacher from school once said that, you know, that I could sing opera one day, and her name was Mrs. Lake. And I said, I'd really like to see if I could do it. He goes, right, then off you go. 2 months, go and see if you can do it. And I was like, really? And he was like, yep, off you go. And I just was like amazed. And I was like, okay. He said, here's a number. If, you know, you wish to come back, then I didn't go back. What I did was I just had this persistence, this determination and this focus and a goal. And the goal was just to see whether in those 8 weeks I could do it. And it just so happened that the South Bank were doing Carmen Jones, and I knew that they were auditioning, and I was like, I'm going to ring them every day until somebody gives me an audition. After about a week of ringing every day, somebody gave me an audition. And I got the audition and I got one solo line. And after that, somebody there, a guy called Hervé Goffin, said to me, oh, Nadine, you've got to sing in Porgy and Bess. I was like, what's Porgy and Bess? And he was like, it's this show. Anyway, he then sent me to France. So then I ended up auditioning at the Opera Bastille. And there was this moment where, you know, these people, there was like an audition panel of 5 people, and they realised that I really didn't have that much experience. So they got me to sing each one line by line. And they were like, So out of the 500 people that auditioned, I was one of them that also got that job as well. But this time I got 7 solo lines. And so I realised, maybe, just maybe, there's something in me that is a soloist. And I need to find out what that is. So I came back and I went to an evening course at City Lit. I looked for sponsorship. I wrote 150 letters. I wrote a business plan. One woman came back to me and she said, listen, go and find the teachers that you need and go and see if you can do it. And I haven't turned back since.
It's such an inspiring story. I mean, every time I hear it, I just think it's really wonderful. I mean, do you ever regret then not sort of getting into opera sooner, or do you think that time in the corporate world sort of has served you quite well?
I couldn't ever have regret about not getting into opera sooner because it wasn't available to me. That wasn't an option. It wasn't where I was from. You know, that was a privilege I just would never have had. But coming into opera and the skills that I had already been fortuitous to have, I realise now have been a saving grace. And especially my coaching mind, because of the way that I think about things. I'm also neurodiverse. I've got a disability, which I'm severely dyspraxic. So being severely dyspraxic has a whole number of things: muscle development, spatial awareness, words, how words come out of my mouth and sometimes get skew-whiffed. My sense of how to plan and organise, and there's just a whole load of things that come under that. But I think also that has been something that has really stood me in good stead, because it means I really do think out of the box. So while at the beginning of being in opera, I spent so much time looking to fit in. Now I recognise that I am kind of my own genre within opera, and that's okay too. And it's that individuality that we all love about all the people that we love and see, you know. But it takes courage to say, you know, I'm going to do what I love rather than do what people are telling me is expected of me, even though I don't quite fit in that hole.
Definitely, it takes real courage. I mean, do you think now, in this sort of COVID age, do you think the avenues into opera are a bit more accessible then? Is that something that you're seeing?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking there's these new voices that wish to have a new language and wish to put digital and different forms of media into opera, and to tell different stories that are perceived as more up to date. I have a firm belief that traditional opera is also very relevant for now, as well as the new work that comes in as well. When I first came into opera, I came into opera just singing contemporary opera. That's all I did. That was my training ground. And I remember people saying, "How do you find this stuff so easy?" Like I remember John Harbison. John Harbison's an American composer, and I was singing his Milosh songs, and he came to my house over from the States, and he came to my house and he was sitting in front of me, and he said, "Where's the score?" And I was like, "Why do I need a score? It's in my head." And, and I realised that was the first time that his work had been sung without a score. So for me there was just this new way of looking at it. But with traditional opera, I believe that is still valid, because those feelings, regardless of what story they are all the same. Our feelings will always be, we will always feel sadness, we will always feel joy, we will always feel heartbreak and guilt, and those universal feelings don't change. The stories change, but those universal feelings. So there is a way to be engaged with all stories, no matter where they come from. But I'm really excited about the new voicings that's coming through at the moment, and the new interpretations of what an opera looks like. That's really exciting to witness at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even as you mentioned earlier, the sort of performance of New Dark Age that you did at the Opera House, which was in 2020, which featured, I think, exclusively music by women. That was something, obviously for me, which was amazing to see. I mean, what other sort of projects, and particularly you mentioned like digital products, what kind of thing do you think we're going to be seeing from now on in terms of like digital media, that sort of stuff?
Well, I just think people are going to take more risk. We'll see more film element to it. We'll see more VJing. We'll see some more digital mapping. We'll see some. I mean, we're doing that in the work that we're creating in Beam. We're having those conversations as we speak, because we really wish for the language of now to have more, and for more people to be able to enter opera in their own way, in the language that they understand and which is more applicable to them. That makes it more exciting as artists for us to be able to give that avenue, But I just think people are willing to be more daring, and the things that they would have held back on, they're now going, actually, there is space for this. There's this space for me to be not box creative, but out of the box creative, filled with all that wonder, and not be wondering what others are thinking about what I'm doing, but doing it because I'm in wonder of what's happening in the world, and creating more miracles and more magic because I'm giving myself permission to be the full artist and not leave part of myself behind.
Yeah, definitely in terms of, I mean, the way that the opera industry is, responding to, I think, a lot of pleas for all sorts of things, but as you said, the language of particularly the internet and of digital things, I think it's a really, really exciting time. I mean, do you think in terms of digital, we already said this, but digital productions and that sort of thing, you mentioned you're doing something with Beam. Can you tell us a tiny bit more about how that's going to be produced, or is it still sort of in the development process?
Well, we're still developing, but we have an idea of how these worlds that we're, these sonic worlds and these visual worlds that we're introducing the audience to are going to keep building. And the director, Darren Abrahams, he's wonderful, and his imagination is, but it's also this collaborative voicing. So while we all walk in with our own ideas, we're all willing to listen and to move with each other. So we create something that's collectively vibrant, not that just one person says that's okay. So it's a new way of working. It's evolving opera in a way for us that I mean, we won't know until June the 26th and 27th what that culmination will be, but I know that we are all excited. Britain Piers Arts is very excited. And to be making this work. And also with Emergence, my duo partner, Nicola Panizza, You know, we are really into the relationship of music, the relationship of the words, the relationship of the composers, the relationship to each other. So we're not just ever doing a stand and sing concert. We're doing concerts that have a physicality to them, have a value to them, have a purpose to them, and tell stories in multidisciplinary ways, but in multi-layered formats as well. So we're just as well like having new language around that for ourselves. So we meet every Tuesday online. So that's that thing, isn't it? We meet every Tuesday, 11 a.m. And whether it's admin, creativity or business or whatever it is, or just have to have a good chat to keep our relationship alive and vibrant, you know, because that's that proximity that keeps all this scintillating kind of energy going and doesn't make anybody. I was really feared when I heard people say, oh my God, but how I'm no longer an artist. The artist is always within us. It never dies. You know, we're born artists. We just are. We're going to die artists. You know, in whatever capacity we use our artistry, it doesn't matter whether we're playing one note on a piano to whether we're, you know, got a pop album out in, you know, and it's selling millions all over the world and you've won a Grammy. It doesn't matter. Your artistry will never, ever, ever leave you. Give it time, give it space, give it a voice.
So yeah, it's just it's such inspiring words. I mean, you as an artist yourself, I've noticed that you've done a lot of sort of different things. You haven't sort of just stuck to one path. You know, you've done obviously opera, but also a lot of songs. Like particularly, I know you have an album of Emily Dickinson songs, for example. Do you think then it's important for particularly like young opera singers or young singers to sort of not box themselves in so much and actually try and approach lots of different types of musical styles?
That I could never, ever, ever answer on. But what I would always tell somebody who I'm mentoring is I would say, listen, create a concert that you do every year. I do a concert at St Paul's in Covent Garden. I've done it for this is going to be my 11th year when I do it this year. Every year. And when I first started, there was no one there. Now you can't get a seat. You know, so it's that thing of, how are you going to create relationships with the audiences that you wish to communicate to? Does your artistry then, does it show up in song? Does it show up in opera? Are you a spoken word person as well? Is it that you're you still play the piano but you're afraid to play? Why don't you play one of the songs yourself? You know, it's that thing of experimentation and then recognizing the parts that you absolutely love and couldn't do without, and then that's how you present yourself. When I recognised that I loved American song, Verdi, Strauss, you know, and then some of the Bellinis and stuff like that, that was it. I had set my mind into that space, and then when people brought stuff to me, if it was more in the style of Verdi or the style of Strauss, or, you know, I could then see, is that going to fit my voice? But I had this foundation or this well of wealth to visit and compare against to say, okay, yeah, this would be good for me. But I don't think you should ever stop yourself from being all of who you are. I think this combination of artistry right now is asking us to come alive and to be the whole artist, not part artist, which we perceive as acceptable.
How do you think what do you think there's like a best way of discovering your own sort of artistic style then?
To just keep listening to your heart. The heart is the first organ to be born. It's born by day 22. You know, it's developed by day 22. Like, we can get so, I said, look after your mental health. But part of that is your spirituality, you know, that sense of connection with yourself. And it doesn't have to be God or religion or anything. It just has to be a power greater than you. It could be the flowers, it could be Mother Nature. But taking those moments to listen to what's really going on. It's an inside journey out, not an outside journey in. And I think that's where you'll find your true influences within yourself, that true road. And journal. One of the most amazing things you could do, have a conversation with yourself. is this journal. I journal in the morning, and Julia Cameron has this thing called the Artist's Way. She also has a wonderful one for artists who are more developed called Walking in This World. And she never lets go of this journaling and just getting out the madness out of your head, or the confusion out of your head first thing in the morning, opens this whole door to a new world that you didn't even know existed. And then before you go to bed, one of the things that I do, she calls it morning pages, but then I call my evening pages power pages. Because this visioning that I'm talking to you about, instead of going to bed worried about all the things that I didn't do, I look at maybe who I need to say sorry to, because I'm also in recovery. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been 20 years sober. So one of the things that I would do is, before I go to bed, and that's what we're taught in recovery, is to take a journal of the day of how did you show up? What were your actions? Where do you need to apologise? But after that, what I would do is write a vision. Like, so my life is this. And so when I'm going to sleep, or when I'm in my sleeping process, it's processing how this thing is going to happen. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm entering a new world again. And it's about changing our neuro pathways, you know, because as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, neurons that don't fire together won't wire together. So you want to really make sure that you're setting yourself up, what we call for to win or to learn, one of the two.
Wow, thank you so much for opening up about this kind of stuff. It's so interesting to hear everything that you have to say, and especially how much I think it matters to work on yourself, as well as obviously your art and your talent and everything. I'm just aware of time, so I'm going to actually turn to some questions from our audience, if that's all right. The first question we have is, someone wants to know, classic, but do you have any advice for auditions?
Yes, I absolutely have advice for auditions.
Excellent.
Please walk into an audition looking what you can give, not what you can take. An audition panel wants to see you at your best. They don't want to see you desperate for this moment. The moment will meet you. It is always a given that you're a great player, or you're a great singer, or you're a great artist as soon as you walk into the room. But they wish for a performance. They wish for you to show them. If they were your audience and you were on a stage right there, right then for them, what are you going to offer us? What are you going to give? So always think, what is my intention? My intention for this audition is to show them that my top C is one of the greatest in the world, or my intention for this audition is to show this wealth of this character and this, and my ability to be able to maneuver on a stage. What are you showing? Walking with something to offer, not with something to take.
I actually might just add my own question to this, which is, do you get nervous when you're performing? And if so, how do you manage that kind of anxious or nervous atmosphere?
I get so nervous. I think my nerves is mainly because every time I go out on a stage, I'm doing something new. I didn't learn the canon. So every time I'm doing something, I'm learning something from new. So I don't know if I can do it yet until it's done, you know, so as it's not a tested ground. But what I do is what I've spoken to about earlier, is I do set up my mind. I set my mind up to be really engaged. I talk to myself. I do meditation before I go on. I set anchors. In NLP, we call like anchors. And I've got these anchors where I do affirmations. And with those affirmations, when I'm in a positive space, I click on these parts of my thumb and finger and so when I'm feeling a little bit wobbly, I can just click on it and my body sends it through me automatically without me having to do anything. The other thing I also do is I also celebrate like the quick wins. So my friend Claire Dale, she wrote a book on physicality, physical intelligence it's called. And one of the things that she says to do is to just keep going, yes, yes, yes. You know, like when you do something great, to remind your body, embody it in your body. So that cuts down some of this nervousness and really getting yourself into your body and into your breath. So breathing. 4 in through the nose, hold for 4, and then 8 out through the nose. So 4 in through the nose, hold for 4, 8, and this really calms down the nervous system. Another thing is tapping. You know, even though I'm feeling really nervous about this right now, I deeply and completely accept myself. And you know, you're tapping on all the meridians. It's EFT, emotional freedom therapy, and there's loads of videos on YouTube that you can use for that. It's really stonking work.
I've had actually advice from lots of people that tapping really helps with advice. So I really hope that anyone who is watching who sort of struggles with performance anxiety or things like that will try this sort of new technique and see if it works. We have another question which is quite broad. What personal challenges have you faced in your career, and looking back, if you could give yourself advice, what would you say?
Wow, I mean, I've had a plethora of personal challenges. I can go to the one directly in lockdown if you'd like. I've been on chemotherapy for the last year, and not because I've got cancer, but because I've had a form of tumour that has needed chemotherapy, and I was dealing with the factors: am I going to live or die? You know, so you've got this whole other, and I suppose I'm always choosing where my mind is, and this is I'm living what I'm telling you. So it's the only way I can really describe is this looking after your mental health is really, 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 really important. So encouraging yourself, championing yourself, surrounding yourself with people who are amazing for you. Some of the challenges that I had coming into opera were more about people saying to me, "Oh, do you think if you spoke properly, Nadine, that we'd understand your English a bit better when you sang opera?" You know, and things like, you know, not getting into any of the colleges, you know. But I think what I would have said to myself then, I mean, I just zipped up and went, I'm just going to go through this. I'm just going to keep going. And I just had this, I was a motivation machine, you know. But I think if I was to look back on myself, it's okay to be rejected. Because every time that you're rejected, it tells you what's next. It really gets to the heart of your new learning. It really gets to the heart of your new growth. And it also makes you understand whether it's something you really want or you really desire. When you get that wake-up call, when you get those answers, a fire comes inside you, and it burns whether you are challenged or whether you're in opportunity. And I think I would just remind myself of that it's okay to be rejected. It's okay to make mistakes. And I think my last thing would be to not allow my colour to hold me back, or my perception of my colour to hold me back. Or where I come from, or my class, or to hold me back in any shape, form or size, because the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter, really showed me how all I needed to do was to reclaim my humanness. And every time I reclaim my humanness, every time I reclaim anything that anybody has oppressed or I've felt in the past or taken away from me, it's now my choice to take back. And that became so empowering for me that I recognised that I didn't have to let it stop me ever. So that's what I would say. I hope those are good examples for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think it's so important. And actually that leads very nicely onto our next question, which was just that, 2020 has been a year like no other, for many reasons, one of them being the sort of a massive amount of awareness given to movements like Black Lives Matter. And in light of this, lots of opera companies have been pledging for more diversity. Do you think this will make a positive impact, or do you think it's another sort of tokenistic pledge?
I have some issues with some people, yes, I'm going to be honest, of people taking money, pretending that they're doing things and they're not really doing anything. I would love for more of the money to go to people who are actually doing the work, and it's visible work. It's visible. and that when people are in those spaces that they are treated not as if they were, the reason why I called my show Beam was because I was so blooming fed up of being called Bane. And when you invert the word BAME, it reads beam. So, because everybody deserves to shine in its own light. Everybody, and so yeah, I'm. There is some tokenistic stuff going on, and what I'm finding also is there is some stuff around data. People love collecting data. And I kind of feel like data is used for this excuse for inaction. But in opera in particular, we have 30 years worth of data that never changed. None of it didn't matter. It doesn't even matter if we did it today. It never changed. Which is a huge indication of, if we have all this data, can somebody use it to serve us for good? Let's start another throwing money at more data. Let's use what we have to make real fundamental core changes. But that takes leadership. And one of the things that I'm finding is that we don't have many conscious leaders. And conscious leadership means that you have to go first. It means that there are going to be consequences of going first, and you have to be willing to wish to take some of those consequences. It takes courage, and it takes real honourable influence to stand in the fire and just say yes, as Mountain Araya would say. So yeah, I think there are some people doing some great work. People like Birmingham Opera have always done great work. People like Graham Vick, and he's always been. People like Bill Banks-Jones has always, with Tete-a-Tete Opera Festival, he's always done great work. English National Opera now have been doing really, really great work. So there are different people. ETO, there are people who are willing to take, a step in the right direction and really be seen as people who in leadership, but there are not as many as I would love.
Yeah, for us, Birmingham Opera Company is definitely a big inspiration. And if you would like to listen to our conversation with Graham Vick, it's on our website. Just a bit of promo. We just have time for another couple of questions. So these are just more sort of fun ones. But are there any opera roles that you haven't yet performed that you'd still like to do?
Yes, it's always going to be Verdi. But I would also love to do Roberta Devereux as well, and Anna Bolena. So but all the Verdi roles, I just want to sing Verdi really. But and I love the Strauss Four Last songs, so I'll sing them till the cows come home. They're like my, I love them.
Yeah, Four Last songs are incredible. Do you have like a favorite recording of them?
Oh my God! I'm going to say her name wrong, so I'm not even going to say it. But I'm not going to say it because I always say her name wrong. But yeah, I do.
Yeah, fair enough. So there's one last question, which is, this is sort of a horrible one, but do you have a favorite opera?
Oh,
tough one. It's a very tough one.
It's a very tough one, but I do love Otello. I do love Otello. There's just something magical about that as a whole opera that I just find. But the other one which I really love is Peter Grimes. There's something about that that's kind of stunning and phenomenal as well. So those are the two things that immediately come to mind.
Well, that is a great note to end on. Nadine Benjamin, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you for asking me. It's been really great to be a guest here, and just thank you for your wonderful questioning.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing so much. It's been great to chat. That's it for today. So if everything is on our website as ever, and if you'd like to tune into our talk next week, it will be with the composer Philip Venables. We've also got an amazing lineup coming up, so keep an eye on the website and on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I've been Zelina Vulliamy.